You're watching TVC Breakfast. It's time for us to look at the papers. Let's see what the headlines across Nigerian newspapers are. And joining me now is Obaniyi Akinwale, one of us in here. Obaniyi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
My pleasure.
Great. And I haven't let Dari left yet. He's still with me here. Dari, thank you. Well done. Right. Now, let's start with this day newspaper. This day says, Soludo says, I'll hit the ground running with my agenda. And promises quality leadership. Defectors have started begging to come back, says Oye. And Buhari to governor-elect. I look forward to working with you. And Fayemi, Saraki, Bajabia Mila, Uzi Buba, others congratulate the winner. You know, it's okay. That's okay. That's this day. Daily Sun is next. Yoruba Group, Ohaneze, ACF, that's Arewa Consultative Forum, Slam Gumi over monetary land demands for bandits. Your threat to national unity, Apex Igbo organization is saying this. Cleric utterances unbecoming Akintoye group says that. Okay, let's move to this Nigeria. Drama of IPOB leaders' arraignment. Kanu to remain in detention till January 2022. Lawyers kick, stage a walkout. U.S. attorney denied access. Vows to drag Nigeria to the ICC. Okay, let's go to leadership newspaper. Justice delayed, concerns over 8,000 pending appeals at Supreme Court. That's what the leadership newspaper is having this morning. Blueprint, on the other hand, is saying Nigeria's external loans, China tops with $11.8 billion as Senate approves $16 billion as well as 1 billion euros for the president. Only $2.8 billion of $22.8 billion earlier borrowed was disbursed. Lawmakers are saying this. Okay, these are all issues around it. The Punch newspaper. Nigeria's debt stock hits 42.7 trillion naira. Senate okays fresh $16 billion loans. While we increase Buhari's loan request by $12 billion, says the senator, more borrowings will put Nigeria in unfavorable conditions. Experts are saying this. Okay, these are all issues. Borrowing, borrowing, borrowing. From there, let's go to the Guardian newspaper. Guardian says Senate okays Buhari's $16 billion and 1 billion euros, $125 million loan request without terms. World Bank report shows massive gaps in systems to track poor countries' debts. All right, certainly we might be talking about this as we open discussions. Nigeria Tribune is next. Senate approves Buhari's $16 billion and 1 billion euro loan request, $125 million grants. Okay, these are all issues around it. Okay, from there, let's go to the Vanguard newspaper. Vanguard says debt hits 44.5 trillion naira as Buhari gets nod for $16 billion loan bid. National Assembly okayed $8.3 billion, 490 million euros in July. Concerns mount over rising public debts. Okay, these are all issues around it. Okay, from there, let's go to the Nation newspaper. Governors can't back out of Paris Club debt, says Malami. Controversy rages over consultancy fee and the AGF states paying already. States are paying already. All right, that's the Nation newspaper. Nigeria News Direct says outrage over Senate approval of Buhari's $16 billion, 1 billion euros loan request. Reduced cost of governance. Muda Yusuf is saying this. Okay. Daily Times, Buhari to French investors. Nigeria is viable to attract sustained FDI. That's what the Daily Times is saying here. National economy is next. Outlook on Nigerian economy. Bright PMB tells French investors. Okay. From there, let's go to First News. Hunger. Federal government states to introduce Operation Feed Yourself, says Oshibajo. Right? First News is saying that on hunger, federal government and states to introduce Operation Feed Yourself. That's what Vice President Yemi Oshibajo is quoted as saying. Okay, from there, let's go to Daily Trust. Federal government unveils 348.7 trillion naira national debt plan, or national development plan rather. Oshibajo Peter Side lead implementation team in private sector to drive initiative with 85% contribution. A plan likely to create jobs and wealth. Experts are saying this. All right, from there, let's go to Daily Independent. Inflation may shoot up as year winds down. Analysts are saying this. Okay, that's the last one we're seeing now. That's Daily Independent. Okay, gentlemen, let's hit the ground running with all of this loan requests and so on. Most of the papers are talking about the $16 billion loan as well as the 1 billion euro loan that is being requested. Obaniyi, let me start with you on this. I wonder what you make of these loans and loans and loans. Economists have always said there's nothing wrong with taking loans.
Obviously, the economic principles support the fact that when you don't borrow what you consume, it makes an ecological sense, an economic sense, so to say. I am not afraid, or I am not discontented with the fact that our system wants to borrow to invest. But my worry would be who are the manager of these resources. And as much as I agree that the current administration in terms of borrowing and utilization has done fairly better than the ones with 16 years ahead of them, I also want this administration to tread cautiously when it comes to borrowing. We've had situations like countries like Kenya that borrowed and we know where they are. And unfortunately, this part of the world, administrators have a way of amassing wealth to themselves and also enriching their pockets. So my question will be, when we are borrowing all these new loans to invest in the infrastructure, so to say, what happened to the loans that we borrowed earlier? Was there a penalty for those that squandered those loans? Have we been able to recover those loans? If we haven't been able to recover those loans, where are those recovery? And the new loan we are coming to get, what is the guarantee that 100% this loan will be utilized properly? But the next thing that comes to questioning is the issue of inflation and the standard of living. The recent ones that we borrow, how much has it affect the daily life of an average man? And vis-a-vis, when we are borrowing an economy whereby virtually every square kilometer is insecure, how do you ensure that this kind of investment are not being attacked by hoodlums, by bandits, by terrorists, vis-a-vis a situation whereby we will not be able to recoup those investments on those funds? So these are some of my worries and my fear. And I just want this government to be very, very careful in terms of, because if you look at our savings, yes, pretty maybe in the last 2-3 months, we've been having a better reserve revenue. I mean, our reserve has been increasing. But the question is that at what rate? What's our exchange rate? What's our job development rate? What is the standard of living in the country? So I'm appealing to this government that we might have to look at other strategies than going to what I call new colonization. And what that means invariably is that if we're indebted to China or to foreign powers in tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars or euros, and we're unable to do it, what it means is that either we like it or not, colonization is what it is called, because they have to impose their rule or their system of governance or their economic principles in order to recover their money. Okay.
Dari, I wonder what concerns you have or how optimistic you are regarding the loans that we're taking. Recall that we took about $8 billion and 490 million euros in July, just July, a few months ago.
My major concern is very lasting, Obaniyi, you mentioned. And it stems from the fact that so much is being said about the amounts we are borrowing. But very little is being discussed about the terms. Now, we keep borrowing and the terms are not public, are not as public as the amount we are borrowing. It gives me worries. Worries in the sense that we've been borrowing. Economists will tell you, how do you intend to run an economy if you don't borrow? We have come to agree with that. But I think we should understand what we are going into. People say the government understands. The government won't be there forever. So those who will take over should have an understanding of what lies in wait. What are the terms? Not just the interest rates. There are other terms. If you don't pay by so time, this is what happens. To ensure that you are servicing the debt, you open your books in this area to us. We'll be involved in this project. We'll be part of this policy. We know there are always things like that. It's only when this government that borrows it leaves and there are issues we get to know those things. It is worrisome. Most of those things will be counterproductive to the policies of future governments and administrations. The earlier we know it, the better. It helps we, the people, to guide the steps of other governments who wants to come. We are borrowing. The ones we have borrowed, are we feeling, is there a way we measure the impact of these loans before we go asking for more? We borrowed to build roads some 6 years ago. The roads are still in terrible shapes. I remember very well that the dying days of Jonathan, we borrowed to fix roads. It was specific. The issue of roads were tied to those borrowings. What happens to the roads? Have they been fixed? The answer is no. Then what happened to the money we borrowed? We keep amassing debt without solving the problems of paybacks, without solving the problems of the terms and conditions attached to the ones we have borrowed before. Paris Club issue between the governors and the federal government is a good example of these terms and conditions that are not open, only to stare us in the face later and create fresh problems. What the governor saying we won't pay? They are telling you that there are some issues of consultancies. Who are the consultants behind these ones we are borrowing? What is their take home? As we continue to service this debt, are there entitlement to certain people? Just know these things. What are the implications of all this on our economy? Then take the average man on the street. If we borrow and it does not show in his life, then if we don't borrow, he stands to lose nothing. Then he will prefer that we don't borrow. Because if we borrow, it must touch the life of the average man. How? We are not asking you to borrow and share money. The roads should be fixed. Power should be attended to. Other facets of our economy should receive some boost. Each time we go our borrowing, before now, I think there is always that expectation on the part of the people that they are going to borrow and things will change. I tell you, Mike, those expectations are not there again. People just hear that they are okay. They only see the changes in the lives of the National Assembly members, in the lives of the governors and other executives, the commissioners, the ministers. The people are left untouched.
Yeah, because we're wrapping up, you weave this into what you're going to say too. The point there is like Mudashir Yusuf of former LCCI DG is saying that government should try to reduce the cost of governance. If we reduce the cost of governance, so much money is actually go into governance. If it is reduced, that we don't need all of this borrowing, they say. That there's enough money to go around.
Mudashir is just playing the ostrich. We all know that the most lucrative business in this part of the world is either elective or appointive posts. You don't have to worry. The only point you need to worry is whether you are a civil servant or a private sector employee. And just to buttress what he said earlier, I remember a case of my lovely state, the state of Osun, when being run by Governor Odufowokan, and invested a lot of infrastructure, but at what cost? So what we witnessed in Osun, luckily my mother was a retiring primary school headmistress. What they faced in Osun, even till now, as small as that state is, you don't want to tell it to your grandchildren. The current government is trying to free from out to mouth to ensure that they are able to do what they are supposed to do as government. That is that terrible. Now, in a case of a nation whereby we are paying taxes, there is also a report in terms of reduced cost of governance, we are budgeting 26 billion for the presidential fleet for a year, and yet we are going out to borrow $16 billion for development. Is it impossible for us to cost all these wastages? Is it impossible for us to look at the National Assembly and ask them, Mr. Bajaber, you are a lawyer, a qualified one for that matter. Let this be part-time, let's make it pay as you go. So there are many ways where the government can cost wastages and invest in infrastructures. The question now is this: at the moment somebody distributed how much will be paying daily if the China come back to borrow the loan. Just like we all know, if a bank borrow a facility for development, a receiver manager takes over that facility and determine how that business is run. All these things we are borrowing. Tomorrow you will see that Lagos Ibadan Express Road at the toll gate is a Chinese man you will see there. Or you see a Sukuk MD. Or at the railway station, you've discovered that you find Chinese and what have you over there. So government needs to be cautious and ensure that we did not sell our tomorrow today. Because what we are doing now with all this borrowing is that we're already hitting our breakfast, lunch and dinner at a go. And when it is now 12 noon, we will come back and say we are hungry when we have ate everything at the first meal. Government should please, for the sake of our own future, for rest of us that are not yet political appointees or political elective office holders, they should not mortgage the future of this country. They should look inward in terms of how to develop our infrastructure. And those that are even culpable in terms of managing these funds, government should use stiffer measures to ensure that justice is being served on them. All right.
We have to leave you here now. Thank you so much, Obaniyi Akinwale, for coming on the program. Thank you. And Daryl Odufowokan, I can release you now.
Finally.
Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you. Great.